The receipt lay in her trembling hands like a sentence already passed. Total 184.60 Tibi de point drew. For a moment, the noise of the restaurant disappeared. The clinking glasses, the soft jazz from the ceiling speakers, the distant laughter from the corner booth, all of it faded into a heavy silence pressing against her chest. Emily Carter stood frozen beside table 14, her tired fingers gripping the black leather bill folder so tightly that the edges bent. Her heart sank in a way only someone living one step away from disaster could understand. Tonight had been her last hope. Her son's fever medicine was almost finished, the rent notice sat folded in her apron pocket like a threat, and the electricity company had already sent their final warning that morning. She had spent the entire evening serving one of the wealthiest men in the city, a billionaire known for his luxury hotels and ruthless business empire, believing that perhaps this one table might save her from another impossible week. But now, staring at that cruel zero, it felt as though the world had once again chosen to remind her where she stood. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel before we continue, because stories like this remind us that even the darkest nights can hide miracles. Emily forced herself to breathe. She had learned long ago that life did not pause for heartbreak. At 32, she carried exhaustion the way others wore perfume, quietly, constantly, invisibly. Her eyes, once bright with youthful dreams, now held the permanent shadow of sleepless nights. She was a single mother raising 7-year-old Noah alone in a small, aging apartment on the edge of the city. Every morning began before sunrise and every night ended long after midnight. Between school lunches, hospital bills from Noah's asthma treatments, double shifts at the restaurant, and the endless balancing act of survival, Emily had forgotten what it meant to hope for anything beyond tomorrow. The man at table 14 had arrived just after 8. The entire restaurant had shifted the moment he walked in. Heads turned. Whispers moved from one table to another like a ripple across still water. Everyone knew who he was. Jonathan Hayes, founder of Hayes Global Investments, was the kind of billionaire whose face appeared on magazine covers and news channels. His sharp charcoal suit looked custom, tailored, his silver watch gleamed beneath the warm restaurant lights, and his expression was carved from something colder than stone. He carried himself with the kind of authority that made people instinctively step aside. Emily had been assigned his table. At first, she had been nervous, but not because of his wealth. She was nervous because famous customers often came with impossible expectations and easy complaints. Yet Jonathan had been strangely quiet. He ate alone, barely glancing up from the documents spread beside his plate. He ordered the most expensive items on the menu, but said very little, his voice low and controlled whenever he spoke. Emily served him with the same care she gave every customer, refilling his coffee before he had to ask, replacing his cutlery after it slipped unnoticed to the floor, bringing an extra napkin when she saw the faint smear of sauce on the table's edge. Still, throughout the evening, he never smiled. By the end of the night, Emily had secretly prayed for a generous tip. Not because she felt entitled to it, but because she desperately needed it. Noah's school had called that afternoon to remind her about the overdue payment for the field trip he had been so excited about. She had promised him she would find a way. Mothers make promises even when they have no idea how to keep them. And then came the zero. Her throat tightened as humiliation burned in her chest. Had she done something wrong? Had she missed an order? Was the service not good enough? For a painful moment, shame wrapped around her like a cold blanket. She blinked back tears, unwilling to let them fall where co-workers or customers might see. Then something caught her eye. Under the plate, barely visible beneath the folded white napkin, was the corner of an envelope. Emily frowned. With hesitant fingers she lifted the plate. There, resting perfectly flat against the polished wooden table, was a thick ivory envelope with her name written across it in elegant black ink. Emily. Her breath caught. The handwriting was firm and deliberate, unmistakably personal. For a moment she simply stared, her pulse pounding so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Slowly, almost afraid of what she might find, she picked it up and turned it over. There was no seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the paper. The words on the page were simple, but by the second line, tears had already begun to blur her vision. It read that true character is not revealed by how someone behaves when they are being watched, but by how they treat others when they believe nothing will come of it. The letter said that Jonathan had been observing her all evening, not as a wealthy customer judging a waitress, but as a man searching for something he had not seen in years: genuine compassion. He wrote that when another waiter accidentally dropped a tray near the kitchen, Emily had been the first to help clean it. When an elderly customer at another table struggled to stand, she had gently assisted him without hesitation. And when a young couple admitted they could not afford dessert for their daughter's birthday, Emily had quietly paid for the slice of chocolate cake from her own tips. Jonathan had seen all of it. The letter continued, explaining that he had once grown up with a mother much like her, a single woman who worked endless shifts in diners and cafes just to keep food on the table. She had died before he ever became successful, and he had spent years buried in wealth while forgetting the sacrifices that built his life. Until tonight, inside the envelope beneath the letter was a check. Emily looked down. Her knees nearly gave way. The amount was 50,000. For a moment, the world seemed unreal. She stared at the number again and again, certain she had misread it. $50,000. More money than she had ever seen in one place in her life. A small note was attached beneath the check. This is not charity. It is an investment in someone whose kindness deserves a future. Emily sank into the nearest chair, tears spilling freely now. Her hands shook uncontrollably as years of pressure, fear, exhaustion, and silent pain broke open all at once. She thought of Noah sleeping at home in their cramped apartment, his inhaler beside his pillow. She thought of the overdue rent notice, the bills stacked on the kitchen counter, the shame of saying, "Not this week," every time he asked for something small. For the first time in years, she felt something she barely recognized. Relief, but the story did not end there. The next morning, Emily woke before dawn, certain it had all been a dream. Yet the envelope sat on the kitchen table exactly where she had left it. Sunlight spilled across the check, making the ink shine. Noah padded into the room in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. When he saw tears on his mother's face, he wrapped his small arms around her waist. Emily held him close, unable to speak for a moment. That day, she paid the rent. She bought Noah his medicine. She paid for the field trip. And for the first time in months, she filled the refrigerator with groceries without calculating every dollar. But something inside her had changed. The money solved immediate problems, yes, but it also gave her something far more valuable, a chance. Weeks later, another envelope arrived. This time it came to her apartment. Inside was an invitation to meet Jonathan Hayes at his corporate office. Emily's heart raced as she entered the towering glass building downtown, a place she had only ever seen from the outside. Jonathan greeted her personally. He looked different in daylight, less distant, less severe. He told her he had not only wanted to help her financially, but he also wanted to offer her an opportunity. His company was launching a community foundation dedicated to supporting single parents, and he wanted someone with real lived experience to help lead the program. Emily was stunned. She had no corporate degree, no polished resume, no experience in philanthropy, but Jonathan told her that what she had was something far rarer: empathy. The months that followed transformed her life. Emily left the restaurant and began working with the foundation, helping struggling parents find childcare, job placement, medical assistance, and emergency support. Every story she heard felt painfully familiar, and every family she helped felt like healing a piece of herself. Her pain had become purpose. Years of surviving had quietly prepared her to become the person others needed. And Jonathan, despite his wealth, found himself changed as well. Through Emily's work, he reconnected with the humanity he had lost in boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. What began as a silent act of gratitude became the Foundation's mission. No one should have to suffer alone simply because life had dealt them a cruel hand. One rainy evening nearly a year later, Emily stood on the stage of a charity gala hosted by the Foundation. The room was filled with donors, families, and people whose lives had been rebuilt through the program. As she looked across the crowd, she saw mothers holding children close, fathers wiping tears, and Noah sitting proudly in the front row wearing a little navy suit. Her voice shook as she shared her story. She spoke of fear, of empty refrigerators, of exhaustion, of the humiliation of believing a zero tip meant another door had closed. And then she held up the very envelope that had changed everything. The room fell silent. She told them that sometimes life hides miracles in the places we least expect. Sometimes what looks like rejection is actually the beginning of grace. Before we reach the ending, please leave a comment telling us where you are watching from and whether you have ever experienced a moment of unexpected kindness that changed your life. As the applause filled the hall, Emily's eyes found Jonathan standing quietly near the back. He gave a small nod. No words were needed. That night, after the event, Emily and Noah returned home to a new apartment filled with warmth and light. Noah's laughter echoed through rooms that no longer felt temporary. On the refrigerator hung a drawing he had made of their little family standing beneath a giant sun. At the top, in crooked childlike letters, he had written, "Mom is our miracle." Emily stood in the kitchen long after Noah had gone to bed, staring at those words. For years, she had believed miracles came from somewhere outside of us, from luck, from money, from strangers. But now she understood. The real miracle had been the kindness she kept giving when life gave her nothing in return. That was what Jonathan had truly seen, not a struggling waitress, not a single mother on the edge, but a woman whose heart remained generous in the middle of hardship. And in the end, that kindness came back to her in the most extraordinary way. So if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep stories of hope, humanity, and second chances alive. Because sometimes the thing left behind is worth far more than a tip. Sometimes it changes everything. And sometimes the people the world overlooks are the very ones capable of changing it. Emily looked out the window at the city lights glowing against the night sky and whispered a quiet thank you. Not just for the money, not just for the opportunity, but for the reminder that kindness is never wasted. Somewhere, somehow, it always finds its way home. And that was the moment she finally believed that her story, once defined by struggle, had become something far greater. It had become hope.